Imagine trying to shove a solid 9-foot wall into a standard office elevator. You can't do it.
Hmm.
But today, we're looking at a piece of AV tech that pulls off exactly that kind of spatial magic. Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is unpacking the specs and the, well, wild logistics of a massive display. We're talking about the Draper 254-208 Profile Plus fixed frame screen. So for you listening, picture a 109-inch diagonal, 16 by 10 widescreen surface, specifically using their matte White XT1000V material. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really imposing on paper, but what's fascinating here is that the entire design philosophy is actually about invisibility.
Which feels kind of paradoxical, right?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about hanging a 57.5 by 92-inch, like a literal billboard in a room.
Exactly.
But, going through these specs, it is incredibly sleek. I mean, the entire unit sits less than 2 inches off the wall.
Right, and it achieves that through a zero-edge design. So it uses these extruded aluminum baffles that essentially tuck the structural support away behind the screen, which creates a mullion-less display. So for anyone dealing with multi-screen setups, that means absolutely zero dead space or, thick borders on the edges.
Oh, right. So instead of mounting these massive bezels next to each other and getting that awful grid effect breaking up the image, you can just, tile these right up against one another.
Yeah, you're basically building a massive optically seamless canvas.
That makes total sense for large corporate training rooms or, say, houses of worship, places where you want an aesthetic illusion, not just a stack of oversized TVs.
Exactly. But that brings up the exact problem you mentioned at the start, the elevator.
Right, the 9-foot wall problem.
Yeah, because if you build a seamless 9-foot monolith, you still have to physically get it into the room somehow.
And you aren't exactly renting a crane to drop a screen into a conference room on the 14th floor.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the logistics, because this thing ships completely unassembled.
It does, yeah.
I have to admit, when I first read that, my immediate thought was, well, this is just high-stakes, incredibly extensive flat-pack furniture.
Well, I mean, it is flat pack, but the mechanics behind it are brilliant. To avoid that spatial nightmare, the frame is extremely lightweight. And the screen material itself, that matte White XT1000V, well, it attaches using a continuous sliding hook and loop system.
Wait, hook and loop, like industrial Velcro?
Pretty much.
How does that possibly create enough tension for a perfectly flat 109-inch surface? I mean, wouldn't it sag or warp over time?
See, that is the secret to the engineering here, because the hook and loop is continuous along the entire perimeter.
Oh, so not just at the corners.
Right. It doesn't use individual snaps or springs or tension rods. It distributes the pulling force perfectly evenly across all 4 edges.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, and that constant uniform tension is exactly what gives you a completely flawless canvas once it's mounted on the standard wall brackets.
Ah, so it pulls equally everywhere. That makes a lot of sense. And that perfectly flat surface is crucial, right? Because this specific material has a 1.0 gain.
Precisely. A 1.0 gain means the screen diffuses light perfectly evenly in all directions.
So it doesn't act like a spotlight beaming the image straight down the middle.
Exactly. Everyone sitting in a wide corporate room gets the exact same brightness and viewing angle.
Right. And I know some AV purists might see that it's rated to support 1080p and, wonder where the 4K or 8K specs are.
Oh, sure.
But it's important to remember the actual use case here. You aren't watching moody cinematic 4K movies on this in a pitch-black home theater.
Definitely not. You're displaying spreadsheets, slide decks, and crisp text in a brightly lit room.
Right.
So reliable 1080p on a high-contrast, uniformly flat 1.0 gain surface is exactly what that environment demands.
Makes total sense.
But, because this solution is so deeply engineered for a specific spatial problem, it really demands total commitment from the buyer.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting. Because you aren't just buying a gadget.
Yeah.
You're essentially commissioning a piece of custom architecture.
You really are.
And looking at the investment, I see the price actually dropped from $2,906 to $2,325.
That's a significant drop, yeah.
It is. But in the sourcing notes, there's a huge caveat. This is a special order item. It is strictly non-cancelable, non-returnable, and non-refundable.
And that's not just corporate red tape. It reflects the reality of the product.
Right. You can't just return a custom wall.
Exactly. This isn't a television you can just box back up if you misjudged your wall space. You have to be absolutely certain of your room dimensions, your wall strength, and your exact logistical needs before you commit.
Measure 5 times, order once. It's a permanent fixture.
Definitely.
So what does this all mean? Well, For you listening, this deep dive is a perfect case study in how modern AV design is solving the tension between massive visual scale and the very real physical limits of doorways and stairwells.
Yeah, it is.
You get the impact of a seamless billboard without having to knock down a wall to install it.
Which brings us to a broader implication. And this raises an important question. With physical screens becoming this incredibly thin, modular, and flawlessly integrated, at what point does a display stop being a distinct object hanging in a room and simply become the architecture of the wall itself?